All right. I'd like to welcome everybody and bring my face up here for a minute. So those of you who don't know me, I'm Naha. I'm the head of faculty here at 22 Teachings. And so I know some of you, it's probably your first time taking a class through our school. So we are located here in Los Angeles, and we just are very fortunate because of the circumstances of the last few years to be put in a situation to provide online classes. And that means being able to provide opportunities with teachers that are outside of Los Angeles. And it's through very high words and recommendations that I was introduced to Crystal. I know some of you guys are already familiar with her work. We were looking for somebody to fulfill a role as a writing teacher in our school, our primary focus being Hermetic magic, the rituals, and also the theory and the practice and history of all those kind of things. And after speaking with Crystal, it turned out she seemed like a perfect fit, sharing with me that not only she had a, a big background in writing, teaching writing in different capacities, but also that she's a hermeticist. So it was a wonderful combination of factors that made this a very, very good fit. I see that all of you guys have your cameras on. We really appreciate that. And I always ask for those of you that are here in class to consider the fact that you're not here just watching a show, but from the teacher's perspective, especially when we can't be with you guys live, it's really nice to feel like there's some actual living, breathing people behind the screen. So paying attention, nodding your head. These are the kind of things that can actually make the teaching experience online make a big difference. So we appreciate that you guys are here. So without further ado, I'd like to just go ahead and thank Crystal for being here. And I'd love if you want to share just a little bit of an introduction about yourself. And thanks everybody for joining us. Have a wonderful time.
Hey, thanks, Naha. Okay, so I know a lot of you are familiar with my work, but a lot of you are familiar with my work less in the writing realm and more in the spiritual healing realm, in the herbal realm, in the astrological realm. But actually, my roots in terms of my training are deeply in poetry. I taught poetry in academia for a long time, but how I was taught poetry was through a deeply magical and hermetic lens, because my first mentor was he was a hermeticist, he was a practiced occultist, and he taught us to write through something that he called the eternal poetic flame. Right, so there's this line tracing back to the very origins of symbolic thought and man's recognition of themselves as aware, as conscious, and able to manipulate their realities and able to change the mirrored image of themselves that is reflected back to them in reality. And to my teacher and the way that I was trained to view poetry, that moment was the birth of the poetic mind. That was the birth of the poetic flame, which is very strongly tied to, of course, fire, right? And the idea of flame, the idea of fire being that thing that connects us to the gods, that makes us aware of our God self, right? That actually creates that portal through which, God can have its experience through our bodies. So I know that that's like very, kind of that's a very grandiose thought, but we're really going to be bringing that down today into a very fundamental place, which is play, right? So we're going to be playing with words today, right? And a lot of you probably know play is the foundation of ritual, right? Play and ritual are also very closely tied together, right? A lot of people see the birth of ritual as having come from games, right? The same as children's games, right? So to write an excellent poem in this class, you need to take it not very seriously, right? You need to have fun with it. You need to let go of the idea, even though, we absolutely are connecting to this, grand lineage of poetic masters, poet shamans, poet magicians who are, literally altering material reality with the technologies of sound and word and symbol. But you're also just a little kid playing a game all at the same time. And the more you can hold that paradox, and again, not take it very seriously, the more profound the work that you produce here is going to be. This was supposed to be an introduction about myself, but I just kind of jumped right into the material. so we're just going to go with it. All right, so I promised today we were going to start with some of the background of surrealism, because these are surrealist writing games, and this is my love, right? Like surrealism is what I focused a lot of my literary studies on. I presented at conferences, I published papers, I've had my master's thesis completely stolen by the head of the I'm not afraid to say this, the head of the University of Georgia's graduate English department completely ripped me off for the first chapter of his book on Dadaism. It's almost word for word my master's thesis. You can look it up. This is one of the reasons I left academia. My hair was falling out. It was very stressful. He was completely allowed to do it. There's nothing I can do about it. That's all I'm going to say about that. That's all I'm going to say about it. Leaving it behind. little joking. Okay, but surrealism is amazing, and there's not enough. I would love for more people in the magical community to kind of recognize what profound work the surrealists and the Dadaists were doing way back around World War II. All right, so what is surrealism? First of all, this is painting by Max Ernst. I'm not going to, for the sake of time, I'm not going to really get into a lot of the paintings that I'm including. They're just kind of there for you to see, take in, build the atmosphere. And if you have more questions about them, then just hit me up. But I wasn't able to write as much about each of the paintings as I wanted to. So surrealism was a direct response and a remedy to industrialization, class disparity, commercialization, and the horrors of mechanized warfare in Europe. So this is the Industrial Revolution and the World War I, which directly came out of the Industrial Revolution, right? And I just want you to think for a moment about how terrifying it must have been to go from a mostly agricultural society to seeing these machines and factories being built, right? Like coal smoke everywhere for the first time, like these factories being built, overtaking landscapes. Like the world was changing at our world changes at a really rapid rate right now, but this was the first time that there was like this huge shift in just general landscape in the way that humans' lives were run. Like the Industrial Revolution was jarring, it was traumatizing, right? And then the first complete mechanized warfare, World War I, that was completely unprecedented. Think about it. 1/3 of the population of Europe was wiped out. And it wasn't just the lower classes. It was the upper classes. It was educated people. It was artists. And propaganda was being used to get everybody excited about it, right? So this was also the first time that people were seeing words being used to manipulate people into fighting this war that they very soon realized was completely based on lies, right? So there was this deep feeling of betrayal amongst artists, amongst the, the literary classes, and amongst the lower class people. And the Surrealists were part of a class of society that, like, at the initial onset of World War One, a lot of them were actually kind of dragged into it. Like a lot of Surrealists were originally expressionists in Germany, and as well as, there was Futurism in Italy. I don't want to go too much into the history of this, but a lot of them were like bought into this idea that this war was going to be like a great cleansing, like a great reset, that man was going to figure out how to live alongside machinery, that class disparity was going to be taken care of. Like, they bought into the propaganda because they were friends with the people who were paid to write the propaganda, right? And then they get to the war and they're seeing, their friends losing limbs, they're dying. They realize that they were completely taken for fools. So Surrealism was born out of this deep betrayal and this, like, they're just like so face to face with the grotesque, with death, right? And just seeing all of these men, all of these women just being dragged literally through the trenches. Like, this was the first instance of trench warfare. So they felt betrayed by their art. They felt betrayed by war. They felt betrayed by symbols. They wanted to completely abolish everything that led to society coming to this place. Like, in my studies, I think of World War One, this period, the period that birthed this movement, as the beginning of the end of the world. Like, there's part of me that literally believes like this was the beginning of the apocalypse. Like, this was the first instance of tragedy that just completely decimated people's psyches, right? Like, I mean, a lot of people went mad, right? Obviously, like, coming home with, these was the first time that people were coming home, like I said, with losing limbs, losing eyes, with their faces, completely mutilated, right? And I don't want to spend too long on this, but I just want you to really like sit with what this must have felt like for them, right? Okay. And so the movement that birthed Surrealism was originally Dada. And hopefully some of you are familiar with Dadaism, Tristan Tzara. And this was the movement that was really defined by the idea of negating itself, right? So Dada sought to negate the word, to negate poetry, to negate art. It was art as anti-art. It was the foundation. It was a movement that wanted to abolish the foundations, not only of art, but of society and of language. So a lot of Dadaism was about finding the tongue, right? So finding the first word, the primal word. And like I said, they did this desperately. So the founders of Dadaism, as well as Surrealism, they were some of the first, and I say this later, but they were the first anthropologists. They were the first ethnologists. They were some of the first people to be reaching out towards the Eastern religions. Tristan Tzara, one of the founders, was in regular communication with the Dalai Lama. Marcel Janco, one of the founders of Dadaism, was regularly going to Africa and bringing back drum and sound rituals. Emmy Hennings was and I said this was largely led by women, right? So Emmy Hennings was this amazing Gnostic mystic who was channeling art from her ancestors. Like, she would come down to the Cabaret Voltaire, like some of the stories are half naked, screaming. She had an important message from her grandmother that she needed to deliver, right? And they were doing this with an eye, as I said above, to class disparity. So they were also merging what they were doing, which was, by all accounts, of course, quote unquote, high art, some of the highest, most revolutionary art, with low art, right? Like, so with the cabaret, with like, she was also like, you know, a chanteuse, like a popular singer. So they were trying to bring working class people in to experience this revolutionary art. Tristan Tzara, Andre Breton, some of the founders would regularly go and read their work in front of factories as working class people were going into work their factory jobs. Like they were genuinely trying to change the world. They were genuinely trying to ease suffering while they were doing this revolutionary work. And Emmy Hennings, now this, you won't read this anywhere, you won't read this on Wikipedia, and this was what, as I said, the head of the University of Georgia's graduate English department took from my work. Emmy Hennings was not recognized as a founder of Dadaism, but she was in fact the first woman, the first person to label this a movement. And she took the experimentations that they were doing at the Cabaret Voltaire on the road and toured throughout wartime Europe to soldiers. So she was actually taking this to the people and branding it a movement. And I could go on, clearly I could go on for a lot longer, but I really shouldn't because we have things to do. Okay, so Surrealism, and what's really important for us to know, is that they sought to distance art and the creative act from the logical and rational mind. So Surrealism kind of took what Dadaism was doing and gave it a system. Dadaism was like anti-systems. It was like more nihilistic, right? And Surrealism was more like a high, thoughtful anarchism. They became communists. I think that was a mistake. But, you know, we can get into that later. So they just, you know, they found kind of like in their evolutions that one of the problems was that we were being overly reliant on logic. We were being overly reliant on ration. We were being too linear. So where did they go for inspiration? They went to dreams, and they centered the experiences of marginalized people and people who live outside of civilization. So they took their inspiration from children. They went into insane asylums. Andre Breton, probably the most important founder of Dadaism, actually worked in mental hospitals during World War I. So he did a lot of like on the ground field study. And as I said, they were, again, some of the first ethnologists and anthropologists who were traveling the world, bringing back the experiences of Indigenous people and weaving that into their work. Okay, I mentioned that. And, you know, why Surrealism matters. So the legacy of Surrealism is that they brought the dream image and the idea of the irrational into the public awareness. They were the first people to do this, right? And they did it so heavily. So there were inspirations, right? There were the symbolists, there were the expressionists, but in terms of like centering the dream and what doesn't quote unquote make sense, that was them. Right. So when you see dreamlike images and just like the irrational, even somebody like Andy Warhol, what he was doing, like that wouldn't have been possible without the legacy of the Surrealists. They were also extremely active politically. Like they brought lived experience. They didn't separate between the artistic and the political. Like this was life for them. They were dead serious. So they, you know, as I said, they were, you know, involved in the Communist Party. They were involved in the Spanish Civil War. They, you know, actively fought in the French resistance to Nazi invasion in World War II. They were staunchly anti-colonialist. When France invaded the Algiers, they spoke out against it. They were active in public assemblies. I mean, these people were doing the work, and they birthed, and this is something that I'm very, you know, I really, again, another thing that I really wish more people knew, they birthed the Situationists we can draw a direct line to the student rebellions of the 1960s that actually, like, you know, how we talk about, you know, Europe has, oh, they have so many more, vacation days. They have such better health care. They have, such better unions. That is because of the student rebellions in the 1960s, most notably, of course, the student rebellions in Paris in 1968. But it was situationist, birthed by surrealist slogans that were written on the walls in the universities and in Capitol buildings. So they did a lot of work for us. It's really, again, just really good for us to know about them. And of course, where this connects to Hermeticism, they not only helped revitalize interest in the occult, alchemy, and spirituality, but they were actively developing ways for us to incorporate Hermeticism, alchemical truths into the creative process, which is, of course, what we're going to be working on next. Okay. And lastly, this is the last point of why surrealism matters, was what was really, I think, is something that one of the most inspirational things about surrealism is that they were constantly questioning themselves. Surrealism was constantly in a process of redefining itself, and it never separated itself from its context, right? So they really actually birthed the culture of social critique that we see. Like, we wouldn't have a critical studies department in a university if it wasn't for the surrealists. Like, we wouldn't have critical race theory without the surrealists. We wouldn't have a feminist department without the surrealists. Like, they birthed the Tel Quel group that really started structuralism, post-structuralism, because Andre Breton had conversations about like, wait, why am I racist? Like, he called himself, it's like, oh, I'm sexist. Like, why do we look at women like this? Oh, I think I might be racist. I'm going to have a conversation with Aimé Césaire about my racism, and I'm going to turn it into poetry, right? Like, they were constantly doing that self-questioning, right? When Andre Breton he got a grant from the French government to go study in Mexico, right? And there's a lot of essays that you'll read about, like, oh, surrealism is useless, they were racist. And it's like, but hey, they were talking about it, right? So he gets to Mexico, and the grant is for him to spread surrealism in Mexico, right? Like what we would call like a white savior complex. He gets there and he's like, literally, he writes back to the government. He's like, I don't know why you sent me here. This is a waste of money. Mexico is the most surrealist country in the world, right? And then he has an affair with Frida Kahlo. Like, so not a total waste of time. And meets Trotsky while Frida Kahlo was hiding Trotsky in his house, but did definitely influence. It wasn't a total waste of time. He influenced and helped to birth magical realism. So all good work. Right. I'm going to. Can I get a? I need a time check. I'm going to stop share for a second just to check time. Okay, great. We are not over time, which is awesome. This is about approximately. All right, so I just want to open up. Does anybody, I know that was a lot, any questions at this point? Okay, all right. So we're just going to move on. I'm happy, anybody who wants to has a question about surrealism or anything related to what I was saying, please just, send me an email. So I touched on this a little bit, but, like, why games? Okay. So for us, the unconscious plays, right? And the surrealists believed that basically all of that life was best lived if you live it in a state of play, right? And this is coming from some people who lived hardcore lives, right? Like multiple wars back to back. Like, they led high stake lives, right? And they were like, we just need to play. Like, that is what's going to make the best art. That is what's going to make life worth living. So that's why that's why the writing techniques that they developed and the artistic techniques they developed were entirely based on play. Games also, as I said, play is ritual. Games, i.e., a form of ritual, allow the forces around us and the spirits around us to get involved in what we're doing, right? They are the holes in which spirits, other entities, other guides, other aspects of your unconscious can get involved in the process. They're a surefire way to get the ego out of the way. Like, you're forcing the hand of the ego to slide aside and let somebody else come in, right? And yeah, like I just said, games stop our conscious mind or ego from taking the wheel. And also, they serve as an important point of connection between people. A lot of these games, not the first one. The first one is kind of like laying the foundations, are communal, because I know a lot of people are independent practitioners now, that the surrealists didn't believe, and a lot of people didn't believe, that's not necessarily the best way to practice. That's not necessarily the best way to like tune in to the morphic fields that allow for spirits to become really empowered in your work. That's done in a group, right? So a lot of these games are best done with other people. And particularly if you can find a group of people that you're continually doing this work with, then you can strengthen that field even more. So a lot of these games are communal and require 2 or more players. Okay. All right. So any questions now, or should we go ahead and jump into our first game? All right, let's do it. Let's jump in. All right. So automatic writing. This is something which has also become known as stream of consciousness writing. Okay, and it's become a lot more common today, but at the time, this was really revolutionary. Okay, so we're going to go through a bit of a process with this. Right, we're going to make it a little more intentional. So to begin, we're going to set an intention and a ritual container so that we can call in our guides to literally take our hand. So when you're doing this, you actually want to develop the sense that you're not the one moving your hand. Okay? And so you do want a container for this. This is something that I learned the hard way. I actually did at one point have my hand possessed. Like, it was writing on its own and I couldn't control it, and it like very creepily came up and like brushed my face and wrote a bunch of times, "You're mine, you're mine, you're mine, you're mine." But I fortunately had a Catholic exorcist friend in the building who came and did an exorcism on my hand, and it's okay, but technically I've apparently like damned my soul because I went back on like some promises I made to the Virgin Mary in the process. But I'm cool with it. And I feel like I'm also cool with the Virgin Mary, so you guys don't got to worry about me. But I'm just saying it is a good idea to have a container, to light a candle, to call in your guides, so that negative spirits that don't creepily brush your face and make like really spook you out. Okay, so to do that, I recommend lighting a candle, lighting some incense, and deciding consciously what forces you want to connect with while you're doing this process. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and do that now. It's a good idea. Also have your paper and your pen ready. And I'll give you a couple minutes to do that, but I'm going to keep giving you the tips while we do it. We'll wait for Abby to come back. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to get into a meditative trance state. Okay, and there are a number of ways that we can do that, right? A lot of people use drumming. I'm assuming a lot of you, either because you're from my list or because you already engage your practices with 22 teachings, I'm assuming that you know how to do this on your own. What I recommend is meditating on your breath with your eyes closed and a wide inner gaze. So when I say a wide inner gaze, what you can do very easily You take your 2 fingers out to kind of test your peripheral vision. Take your fingers out as much as you can. Make sure that you see both of them. Take note of how kind of like your brain and your eyes feel as you're looking at both of your fingers, and then close your eyes and maintain that. If you feel like you lose it when you close them, just open them back up. Make sure you can still see both of your fingers and then close them again. Keep that. In some traditions, this is known as your spirit face. Like how you feel when you see that. This is also called wide-angled vision. When you feel this, what it does is you're literally forcing the body into your parasympathetic nervous system. So the longer you hold this, the deeper you're going to get into meditative state, like literally like brain waves transfer, right? Hold that and then focus on your breath and find your heartbeat. I'm going to do that for just a couple of minutes. While you're here, begin noticing feeling tones in your body. Notice changes in your breath. Notice changes in temperature. You can notice any aches. And watch the speed or the theme of your habitual thoughts change. Just keep coming back to the gaze set wide, as if you're looking at your periphery with your eyes closed. And see if you can notice a rhythm between your breath and your heart. Keep it soft. And see if you can let your body become so heavy and soft that you feel your heartbeat and the pulse of your blood rocking you gently forward and backward. Try to stay here 3 more breaths. Nice and still, nice and heavy. Right, and now stay in this state, and you're going to let a letter, any letter, come to you. Ask your guides to send it. Okay. And now go ahead and open your eyes. Take up your pen. Don't start writing just yet. When you begin writing, you're going to make a commitment to yourself right now that you're going to write as quickly as possible. All right? And if you begin to lose speed, or you notice your habitual mind taking over, or your egoic mind taking over, you're going to leave a space on your paper, and you're going to begin the next sentence with your fail-safe letter, right? The letter that your guides gave you, and then start writing again. The goal is as fast and as thoughtless as possible, right? Begin with your intention, whichever guide came in. You're imagining that they're the ones writing. They have control of your hand. Your hand is not your own, right? As soon as your hand becomes your own, leave a space on the page and start with your pivot point. Start with your fail-safe letter, okay? We're going to do this for 5 minutes. Okay? Everybody ready? Anybody have a question? All right, ready, set, write. Try to keep the wide angled vision while you're writing. Another tip I also find writing in cursive helps just because you can lift the pen less. Two more minutes. Remember, the faster the better. And if you need to be just space, letter, 2 words, space, letter, 2 words, that's fine. Just keep using that letter. And remember, this is play. Don't take it too seriously. Wide angled vision, heartbeat, heavy on your seat. If you need to cleanse the brain and look at your candle every once in a while, that's great. One more minute. Okay, stop. All right. Who's gonna be brave? Who wants to share? All right, Stevie, hit us with it. If we can figure out how to unmute. Can I unmute you? I don't think I can.
Did I do it?
You did it.
Oh. I've never done this before. It's very strange. Should I just read what I wrote?
You can tell us a little bit about the
Okay.
experience if you want, or you can jump right in. Whichever
Okay.
feels better.
Bring me only what you can carry on your back. Bent and strong and weary, put it down at my feet, and I will praise you. Being only alive, only now and forever, only for you, for me. Bring the burden. By the time you get here, you are lost. My only face is drawn and faces inward into the deep, cold soul of the world. Not world, all that is and is not. Heart song plucked on heartstrings, sing. Crafted you from clay and stardust. Bitter and ugly, you pretty one. Every time it begins the same, but we forget and we will forget again. Believe be beingness. I don't know. Lost again and learning to be comfortable there, wherever that is. Striving, stirring, string connected to every heart. Thanks.
How did it feel? How did it feel even to read it out? Oh wait, we can't hear you again. Yeah, I can.
There.
Okay.
Okay. I just very, very strange. I feel sort of a surge of energy. It's like a little bit different from my normal fear of public speaking. It's just kind of electric.
Nice. Do you feel like, how did it like as that voice was coming through, do you feel like it felt familiar?
Yeah, but I don't know really why. I mean, I sort of, but it didn't feel like it normally would when I'm writing poetry. Usually, sometimes it kind of gushes out of me, but a lot of times, yeah.
It's the muse, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and you'll learn that and we'll talk about this a little more in a little bit. There's different parts of your brain that you can activate in different ways that you're going to notice that different voices, different personalities come through, and you're going to be able to make friends with them. So it's good. So all of you should do this. Like as you read these, and I want, more of you to read them as well. I want you to really sit with how that felt to channel that particular intelligence, that particular current, and sit with what they have to tell you. Like it's a profound moment when you like open up, let the ego aside, and let another entity channel through you, right? And it sounds like, if from reading, it sounds like there are some profound messages that came through. Right? Does it feel like that? Is there something like when you read some of those images, do any of them sit in any particular part of your body, or do you feel like you can trace any of them back to a way that you've been seeing yourself that maybe can shift now?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Great.
I've been reconnecting with a lower lower abdomen, trying to figure out how to feel that anger and power and turn it into something, instead of trying to like push it out to other parts of my body, or like mask it into sadness or depression or stuff like that. So there's definitely a couple things in here that resonate with that.
So some fire issues.
Yeah. Yeah, funnily enough.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Stevie. Thank you for being brave enough to come and share, and thank you for doing this work and being here.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Who else? Who wants to go?
Can I share, Crystal?
Absolutely, Brian.
Okay. So I will share one of these paragraphs. It goes, little did you know that things would keep going like this until they stopped going and begin to fly and jump around in large patches of rain. Levels to this, levels of flying and soaring and wanting to feel and let go of whatever comes, let go of whatever happens. It arises now and stays now, now. We go underworld shopping to get all of the necessary tools and arts for your box. Yes, your pretty box, the box what will have your needs, that has your needs. That is what it is for an eternal present now that blooms like a great volcano underneath dream-stained bridges with trolls that sing and sweat for the rest of my life. It's right here, this speed, this velocity, this hesitation. It's all one contradiction that swirls into. And then I lost it, and I got L. So I feel like that last word is critical. But that's it.
You don't want to
Thanks.
read from where you start off with L?
I couldn't. We ended
Oh.
at that L.
L.
Yeah, so I feel like that will be the next journey to figure out what that
Yep.
L could
Yep. Yep.
be.
Fortunately, we have more games.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on there. You got
Yeah.
got a toolbox from the underworld and everything. Tell us about your process. Brian has been doing this work for a while.
Well, I really liked the trance invitation. That was nice. And yeah, I do have a practice of like where like you use the term muses, crystal, and I like that idea of just kind of like tapping into kind of where I'm at in my environment and just seeing what wants to be expressed, like what kind of force or energy that I want to kind of express with. And yeah, I think my intention was something interesting. Please take my hand, which was kind of a wild card, and yeah, that's what came out. So that was my process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, let's do one more. If somebody wants to. You don't have to. Yes, Marcy.
Hey all, thanks so much. Super nice to meet you, Crystal. Oh my God. Woo! Like a big in your fan club here. I'm so nervous. Okay, you and Merlin, love you guys. All right, let's see. This is my first I don't know, for what does that mean? Okay, my letter was W that came up. I didn't need to use it though. It was V
great.
and W. So in here, it is why I wouldn't want everybody to see the thoughts around love, marriage, all the games, the intricacies, why we want all things around magic and mirth. The hopscotch boards are drawn, the chalk laid out, numbers, symbols, anything with which we find our greatest fears. And all we tend to write out loud, our thinking, our praying, everything, all its glory. Horses drawn, swords drawn. We go near rivers, oceans, pick up rocks and twigs, seeds that rattle. Big smiling faces are mused to find the cornerstone of life itself. All the silly archetypes we make, groups of us all staring blankly into screens. Our thoughts meld with the melting of our beating hearts. To wit, we change partners. We turn songs into poetry. We flash our insights as if bought about by those and this meaning and mirth and love and connection, eyes, everything. Oh my God, I was just like moving my pen here. This isn't part of it. It's just the seed. I can't even read the rest of it here, Crystal. Merging with divine sources, dreams impacted. Da 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 da.
There you go. It'll come later.
Way off we go.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And when it's like, so I want to say this for everybody. So even though, Marcy's going to be the last one to read here, all of you should go through that process of reading it out loud. Right? Because it's the voice saying something, in the way that you vocalize it, like that's where the power really really comes, and you're going to have a very different experience of your writing every time you say it out loud. And the surrealists were really into the power of the voice too. And, as we were speaking way before we were writing, right? And it's the magician's words coming out of the mouth, right? Like the use of the tongue, right? The vibrations that really does that work of manifesting. So writing it is one level, but speaking it is a whole other level. And even that experience of those hiccups and the not being able to interpret the words, that's part of the poetry. Like that's part of the experience, and that's part of the power. Right. And even the part of your brain that is doing that, what does that curve mean? What does that line mean? Right? Like that's an important part of the creative process. You want to dig into that because there's something there. There's a conflict there. And conflict, ambivalence, confusion, those liminal spaces where you're not sure what they mean, that's where the most potency is. That's where the juice is. So you want to settle into that. Does that make sense, Marcy? Yeah, great. All right, so we're going to move on to the next game, but like I said, I want to make sure that you read these out loud later, right? Okay, so this automatic writing, this is the foundation for like almost every other surrealist game that there is. So it's doing this eternal spirally thing. Zoom quit unexpectedly? Hello? Is everybody still there? Okay. I keep getting this note that Zoom quit unexpectedly. I don't know. Okay. Hopefully this still works. Okay. So part of me is a little bit nervous about doing this one. Brian's done this one before. Does everybody have, so I ask everybody to be seated near a bookshelf. Is everybody by a bookshelf or have a book next to them? Can everybody run and grab a book at random quickly? Can anybody not go run and grab a book at random quickly? All right, we're going to wait for Marcy to come back. I am going to grab my book at random quickly. And when Marcy, well, she can hear it a little bit later. Okay, there she is. Great. All right. So for this next part, we are going to be using the art of bibliomancy to craft a poem. Now this is, so the randomness in automatic writing is really, that's that experience of kind of like embodying this other intelligence. Bibliomancy, in the same way that, we randomly pull tarot cards, or we choose a random time to look at the sky and read the stars. This is a way to give the divine forces of chance a portal to enter into our poetry. We're going to be doing this in a group, right? So it's also the way that your guides, your portals into divine intelligence are interacting with mine, right? So this is part of where this is our first step into building a collective field to tap into the collective unconscious, right? Which becomes stronger and stronger the more we engage, like the more people that come into that field, right? And Brian can attest, you get some really incredible themes, and you can get some really profound work out of this method. Okay, so everybody has a book that you've chosen at random. All right, next. Oh, I don't know why this is coming up like this. Sorry. So first, we've already done the, setting our intentions. We're in the trance state. We want to utilize that same trance state. And now you are going to open to a random page. Choose a word with your eyes closed. Right? Eyes closed. Pick a word. It can be a set of words if it is like encompassing a singular idea. All right. So you're not doing just an article or a conjunction. You know, you want it to be the closest word or phrase, not more than like, let's not do more than four words. Okay. And then we are going to type those out on the chat. So I'm going to stop share here. Does everybody have their words? Can everybody send to everyone in the meeting? Yeah, so I have vision of being. We're going to try to get 20 words, right? Dream, vision of being, the spiritual path. Everybody type it in. Delusions of hope. Good. Intelligence. Thank you. Jamie, you sent to me in a direct message. So you want to send to everybody. What is really stopping? About a song. Okay, great. And now you're going to do it again. New book, if you can, if you already have a book, if you only have one book, then just do that. Random page, close your eyes, point. And then write it down. Oh wait, did I send mine in direct message? Oh wait, no. Everyone in meeting. Okay. All right, so everybody can see these, right? So we're starting from Brian with dreams, with dream, to Jamie with underdeveloped sexually. Thank you, Jamie. That is going to be delicious to work with in poem. Okay, all right. So those are our words. I'm going to share my screen one more time. And tell me this is a tech thing. Can you see the list of words with this up or no? No. Okay, so we're just going to go over the rules here. Okay, so we have our list of words. We are going to write a poem using each one of these words. If you have something that you feel like you just can't fit in, you're going to make that the title of the poem. Okay, you can include as many other words as you like, but we do have a time limit, right? So we want to make this as automatic as possible, right? So we're trying to use that same tool of automatic writing. We're just giving ourselves an additional limitation of having to use each one of these words or phrases. If something is a phrase and you want to manipulate that phrase, it's fine. You can also change gender, you can change tense, you can change, if something's singular, you can make it plural. If something's, past tense, you can make it future tense, so you can play with it. You just need to stick with the basic ideas and use those words. If you want to separate out a phrase, you can separate out a phrase. So you do have some creative, ability here. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Questions, concerns? If you have a question, just go ahead, Alexandra.
Wait, so we're using all of the words on
All
the
of the words.
hours. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
How do we get to the top here of the word? Mine says competence from you, Crystal. I don't know how to get above that.
Can you scroll? You don't have a little scrolly
oh,
bar?
I got it. There's my scroll. All right. Sorry.
Okay, great.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
it's starting with dream
Yeah.
and ending with underdeveloped sexually. Again, thank you, Jamie. All right. Okay.
Do we need to the words in order?
No, you don't need to use the words in order.
Okay.
You can use the words in whatever order you want. You can change tense. You can you're using the root of the word, right? So I can say delusion. I can say intelligences. I can, say what has been really stopping her, right? Or and you can separate them all, like comes from lack, I can use comes from somewhere else and lack somewhere else, right? So, get creative, but don't think about it too much. Okay. So we're doing 7 minutes. All right. Ready, set, right. If you have a question, just come on and ask me. Just unmute yourself. But try not to think, right? Wide angled vision. Just look at the word and back to your page. Okay. Stevie, you can't find the chat. I'm going to send the chat to you in a message. Stevie, can you see that? You got it? Great. Oh, also, you can reuse a line to create a motif, right? Like you create a running theme, so you can repeat things. And that's often helpful if you have one line that really draws you, repeating it throughout or using it in different ways. Let the words do the heavy lifting. So look up, see a word, write a line. Let the phrase do the heavy lifting. All right. It's that time. Finish up your line. And who wants to be brave? It would be nice if we had somebody who didn't read yet, but it's okay to sit it out.
All right, I'll go.
Great, thank you.
Dream or wake up, what vision of being exists in this reality? The spiritual path is bogus, or maybe the spiritual path is right here. You might have delusions of hope that you'll leave in control, but it has never been up to you. Silly intelligence is overrated. Just be here now. Don't fear. Breathe to exist, my friend. Your trauma is what is really stopping you. Don't let it. Stop and don't dwell. Reasons are left sung. What can't you do about a song? Like a rolling stone, alas. Do you have intelligence or simple competence? Didn't you hear me? Intelligence isn't my friend. 12 to delve, eat to sleep, sleep to dream. You're being swept away. How blue is the sea? You may need to get, comes from lack. What does it mean? On the surface, she's blank. Inside, she is wormed. She is not underdeveloped sexually. She's throbbing for you. Go get her. Sail to her. She is yours, dear Venus in the sky. Damiana, young mother. She speaks her truth. You may listen or die.
Loved it. How did it feel?
It felt like it felt at the start masculine and then it ended very feminine. Felt like I had like two people.
Yeah, there was a real pivot point there.
Mhm.
Where would you say, could you identify the pivot point for me?
When somewhere in the sleep to dream, I think, yeah, going into sleep to dream. And then once I got into that kind of dream state and you're being swept away, how blue is the sea? That's where it felt became feminine.
Yeah, you really let the power of the words take you out of the abstract and like into this more visceral, juicy space. It's like there was good stuff happening, but it was like it was theory. And then you made it an image. You put it in your body. So that I feel like that was a really beautiful progression.
Thank you.
It was really beautiful to see. How did it feel?
It felt, I don't know, it felt weird. It felt I don't know. Yeah, I just felt like I had two people inside of me. Yeah, one was it was almost like a storyteller, like a elderly
yeah.
man, and then the rest was like this, I don't know, like this beautiful female feminine force that just was like, I don't know, invigorating. It felt very invigorating at the end.
Did you have a preference for one over the other?
Yes, the second, the
The
female.
second?
Yeah.
Nice. Great. Just remember, go back, read it again. And you'll be able to, you know, make those shifts and channel those intelligences with like increased fluidity and like kind of more at your, you know, at your command, which I think will be really fun.
Okay.
So thank you. Thank you very much. Who else would like to go? Jamie.
Yeah, it does not make any sense at all, but at least
Oh,
I
wait,
can read
hold
it
on.
this time.
One second. What just happened? The earbuds died. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Great.
Dreaming, dressing up in song and dance within the ecosystem of the high card players. A vision of being the one covered in mud and trudging through the depths of the universal playground. The spiritual path plays with giving away the ladybug that plants herself in the corner of the window. She's watching me with delusions of hope that she will partake in the sharing of the bloody steak I had at the restaurant on my birthday. The intelligence of the ladybug reminds me of the time I got caught in an elevator for 6 hours and had to wait until the building burned down to be freed from the box. Maybe the ladybug knows more of the spiritual path and this vision of being. What is really stopping her from eating this steak? She may be underdeveloped sexually. What is the sexual development of an insect, anyways? On the surface, we create so many problems. Problems the stone and the ladybug maybe don't know about. I guess get comes from lack. That was.
That was fascinating. Tell us about the process.
Yeah, I don't know, like I felt like it just like with the first time I like didn't want to get caught up in like letting my mind trying to make it like mean something, so I kind of just had to like write and I couldn't read anything at all. So the fact that I could actually read this was like pretty cool because I'm like, oh, like I feel like I'm starting to navigate, like, even though it makes no sense, like it's like like that's strange, like I was never trapped in an elevator, like I don't know where the fuck that came from, it's just really weird. So I think it's funny.
Great. And all of those funny, nonsensical places, again, like that's juice. That's magic. Like that's what you really want to put your attention on, like when you're reading. So there's little bits I'm gonna weave in here. Okay, we got 2 more games to go, but I want I'm sorry, I was afraid that these were gonna run long, and they are, but I have to say this. Okay, so so those of you who aren't super familiar with surrealism, there's this beautiful line from the Comte de Lautremont, also known as Isidore Ducasse, which is like, the beauty, like the most beautiful thing is the chance meeting on a dissecting table of a sewing machine and an umbrella. Okay, so it's like this really nonsensical place, these really, strange, weird places that don't make any sense, like particularly when they're images, it's like they're like ripe with meaning, right? And so there's neurologically speaking, neuroscientists have found that there are 2 things that we can do that actively build more neural connections in our brain. Okay. The one is reading a lot of Rumi, reading a Rumi poem every day. The next is reading surrealist poetry. Okay, so people who read a lot of surrealist poetry can more readily create more neural connections in their brain. Right, so that and Rumi, so those are your go-tos. And the reason is it's doing this work of trying to making sense out of the irrational. Right, it's like those are, and in my mind that's true because these are two places in very different ways that you meet God, that you learn the language of God. Rumi got it through, like, you know, meeting some super saint in the desert and doing crazy dervish shit and fasting and a lot of time in the sun. You don't have to do that. You can do surrealism. Okay. All right. So we are going to move on. I was moved to create a sea shanty. I love that, Brian. I really want to hear everybody's. And like I said, please do read it back to yourself and focus on those places that don't make sense, because it's going to be the work of making them make sense. And you can make them make sense over and over and over again in all different kinds of ways that you're really going to get a lot of juice here. Okay. We are going to move on to our next game, and we might actually skip the game that I have the slide up for next and jump right into the other one because we are running low on time. Okay. So I think we are going to skip this one, but I want you guys to know about this one because this is the most classic, the most famous of collaborative surrealist writing games. It's called The Exquisite Corpse, and some people are familiar with it in its more visual sense. And so what you would normally do is you would have a piece of paper, and visually speaking, somebody would begin to draw an image, fold over the paper so that just the bottom lines are there, and then they would begin drawing. So all you see is just these little lines, and then they draw a new image underneath that, fold it, and draw it. The way you do it in writing is by folding a piece of paper. If we had a little more time, the way we would be doing this is setting our intention, setting the ritual space to bond our minds. We would meditate with the collective of strengthening that collective field. And we're going to be doing this a little bit. We're going to be doing some of this in the next one as well, until it's your turn to write. And then you would send your line to me, right? I'll notify you when your turn comes. So you will all be taking turns sending me your line without knowing what the other person has written, right? And then when it is your turn to write, you know, you're doing it in automatic writing style, sending it to me in a private chat. Okay, so before we move on to, we're going to be doing something of that in this game of opposites. Brian, we've done this one together before as well, but we're doing it with this private chat technology, right? So with the Exquisite Corpse, we would typically be sitting around a table. We'd have a candle set. We'd already be, you know, we'd be in our trance state. There'd be one piece of paper. You know, the first person would write the title, fold it over. The next person would write, fold it over. The next person would write, fold it over, and you just try to do it as fast as you can. Back in the day, sometimes we would have like 6 exquisite corpses going at a time, right? And it was one of my favorite things. I actually used to, okay, quick story, and I know these stories are part of the reason that we're running late, but I think some of you find them amusing. So back in my youth, one of my favorite things to do would be to go to strip clubs and write exquisite corpses with the strippers and the patrons. I have been kicked out of 4 strip clubs for doing this, but the strippers love me. Literally, like, come over to dance. I'd give them $1. They'd be like looking in between their legs and be like, "Can you write a line of my poem?" They're like, "Oh yeah, sure." No, anyway, they're beautiful. I call them stripper corpses. It's bad. It's horrible. I know. I probably shouldn't have even said anything. But they are brilliant if anybody wants to read them sometimes. Okay. All right. So the next game is called Opposites. Let's try to get back into our apologies for breaking our translate state. Okay. So we're setting our intention, our ritual space to bond our minds, come up with your theme. Now we have to decide, do we want a theme? This is a collective, right? Do we want a theme for this collective poem, or do we want to just dive in and see what happens in the movement? You can just take yourself off mute and voice your opinion. Does anybody have a theme automatically coming to mind? Or should we just go in blind?
Fulfillment.
Say that one more time.
A theme of fulfillment.
Fulfillment. Okay. All right. So our theme is fulfillment. I like that. All right. Now, I'm just going to go through all of these. Right. So meditating with the intention of strengthening the collective field until it's your turn to write. I will send you your line when it's your turn to write. Right. And then you are going to creatively write the opposite of the line that you've been sent. Right? Rapidly, using very little discursive thought. Now, I want you to think, like I said, really creatively about what the opposite of the line that you've been sent can be. You can do this in a bunch of different ways. This is part of really expanding your brain capacity, right? So you can think the opposite of color, the opposite of feeling tone. You can do opposites of individual words. If something's singular, you can make it plural. If something feels dark, sad, and heavy, you can make it feel light and jolly. If something feels like it's really hard and logical, you can make it really irrational. If something's really irrational, you can make it seem clinical. Does that make sense? Right, so we're going to make a poem that is going to be built off of each of us writing the opposite of the line that we're sent. Right? And so the initial theme is going to be fulfillment, but I don't want you to think too much about that theme as you're writing. Again, you're using, oops, sorry, stop here. That's my sales pitch page. We don't need that. Okay. All right. So does anybody have any questions? Marcy, go ahead.
Are you sending us a line? Where are we looking on chat or?
So you're going to sit meditatively.
Okay.
Until I send you the line that you're going to write the opposite of.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Just one line. Got it. Okay.
One line, but it can be as long or as short as you want.
Okay.
It just has to be the opposite of what you're sent. Okay. And Brian, can I ask you to write the first line, and you're just going to send it to me in a direct message?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, and then I'm going to send it to the next person. So if you have a candle, I recommend sitting and looking at the candle, or sitting just, in meditation with wide-angled vision, feeling your heartbeat. But we want to strengthen and develop the field as we're waiting for our line. That's what we're
How do we get the message when it's not to everybody? Well, I just see.
I'm going to direct message it. When it's done, I'll send it out to everybody.
Yeah.
So we're just sitting meditatively. I will say the next person who will get this is going to be Abby. So Abby, you'll be on deck. While you're here, remember you're wanting to be receptive, open, you're feeling, trying to feel the essence of what's being written. Abby, you have your line. Shane is on deck. Even if you're on deck, you're still in that receptive space, wide angled vision, filling your heart. Shane, you have your line. Marcy, you are on deck. So we're tuning into the field of what Shane's writing. Marcy, you have your line. Alexandra, you're on deck. My apologies for running a little over. Right. Alexandra, you have your line. And Stevie, you are on deck. Even if you've already written, your field is still contributing to this process. So just stay with us. All right, Stevie, you have your line, and Jamie, you're gonna bring it home. Looking beautiful. Oh, wait, no. All right, Jamie, take us home. Alexander, does your cat want to write a line? That should have some fascinating things to say. All right. We have our poem, everyone. And now, who would like to read it? I'm going to share it. Oh, wait. Can everybody see the poem?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to make it bigger. So line breaks are important. We would typically add those in. And Shane, how would you like to read it?
Sure. Is there a way to, oh, sorry. Okay. Fulfillment. Let go of your tether. Let go. Be wind, void, beyond the depths of winter and into an invincible summer. Behind the song of summer, not onto a fallen autumn. Ahead of seasonal shifts on bound sullen roots of dead winter trees. Summer, 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 she never ends, now does she what a loving embrace it is to bestow. Cold, 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 and he is all over now, indifferent, winter leaves you lonely. Hot, so fiery hot, she is just beginning, so deep in her knowing. The heat hugs you like a furry blanket, so connected, so loved.
There you go, everybody. I am going to put this in the chat so that everybody can keep it. Take that little bit of magic home if you want to copy it, put it into a file. Again, apologies for running over a little bit. I have a hard time keeping myself from making commentary sometimes. But I hope everybody enjoyed it. And I see Naha is back. Do you want to close us out, Naha?
Oh my goodness. I just have to say that in my eavesdropping, I was moved so many times. Thank you so much, Crystal, for this beautiful teaching and sharing, and everybody for your contribution. Um, we are hoping to make this a regular thing. We would love to be able to have Crystal presenting this particular workshop and with additional games and techniques and ways that you guys can do this interactively. So look for that in the future if you guys want it. Your feedback is always very welcome. And then coming up on the 12th, she'll be presenting Tools of Poetry, which is a 4-part course. So that's the first longer format course with Crystal. So we hope some of you guys will be considering joining. We'll send out the link, and you guys are all going to get the recording as well. So thank you again so much, Crystal. Thanks, everyone. And to our new people and to our regular students, lovely to see you guys here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Naha. This was great. I had a great time. I hope everybody else did too. And can I just say one more thing about the Tools of Poetry course before we go? So you're learning a lot of so in this course we learned a lot of techniques for just kind of opening up and flowing forth. And this is the really important feminine work, right? We're going to be learning some of the masculine work in the Tools of Poetry, right? Really honing image, how to really heighten ambivalence, how to create density. And it's like knowing these two elements of poetry is what can create like a real magic powerhouse, both for your personal work and for you to just be able to share your soul with others and really create both the personal reality that you want to see, as well as the correct relational reality and intimacy that you want to see in your life. So thank you so much for coming. Brian, did you want to say something before we go? I saw the hand.
I think I was just clapping for you.
Oh, okay, great. All right, thank you so much, Naha.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Oh my God, you are such a muse. I was looking forward to this since your message came across. Looks like I'm still on direct message here, but yeah, thank you. It was so nice being with everybody too. And what a gift. What a gift. Wow.
Thank you,
you.
Marcy.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. See you soon.